Good evening and welcome to the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa County Candidate Forum for the Richmond City Council race. My name is Robert Rogers. I'll be serving as the moderator this evening. I want to remind all of our attendees and also our participants to please turn off your cellular phones or other electronic devices. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, which means we do not support candidates or political parties. We can, however, take positions on issues when they can be based on League studies. It's League policy to ask that no one display campaign buttons, sign, or literature within the room. However, a table in the back hall contains materials for the audience to take with them. Again, welcome this evening. Thank you very much to KCRT, a great partner of the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa County. Thanks also to B. Roberson and Naomi Williams, who will be our timekeepers this evening, also with the League of Women Voters. Thank you as well to Joan Carpenter and Consuelo Lara. They'll be gathering questions from the audience that will be able to be asked of you, the candidates. So thanks again all for being here. We have a great race for Richmond City Council that includes many candidates. We'll begin with opening statements. Opening statements will be allotted 2 minutes each. They'll be followed by a series of questions, which will each be 1 minute, and then a closing statement that will also be 1 minute. We'll start all the way to my left and proceed across the dais, and that will be beginning with council candidate Nat Bates. Again, a 2-minute opening statement. Mr. Bates, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Nat Bates. Although I was not born in the state of California, I was born in Texas, and my mother migrated, as so many others, during the World War II era. Richmond is the only home I know. And those of you that don't know me, you should know that I have been your mayor twice, vice mayor numerous times, and a city councilman for almost 3.5 decades. Richmond is my home. Richmond is where I love and who I love. I've been most fortunate in the sense that I have been able to serve this city as a representative, and I've had good health, a lot of energy, and I want to continue to serve this city. Richmond is a great city, has a tremendous amount of potential. And I think that we, as a collective council members that are elected, working with the other council members, need to get to work and put this city first and move it forward. This is the only city I know of. My family was raised here. Great-grandchildren are here. And I just hope that the voters will recognize my contributions in the past, which is quite numerous. Hilltop Shopping Center, Auto Warehousing, Target, Costco, all of these financial companies that bring in revenue and jobs to the city of Richmond. I've been part of it. The many housing units that we have in the city of Richmond, I've been part of it. And I want to continue to serve the community I love and respect.
Mr. Bates, thank you. Next up, Diego Garcia.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Diego Garcia. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be here with you guys. In 1963, my dad was one of the first Mexicanos who worked at Color Spot Nursery in North Richmond. Soon after, he brought me and my family over, and 2 of my younger brothers and sisters were born in the old Richmond on 23rd Street. The low economics, failing education system, and the no youth resources for me and my brothers pushed us to the gang life. By my 19th birthday, I was already in jail, I was shot, and I was a young father. However, thanks to the community leaders like Marcos Gonzalez, Fred Jackson, Larry Lewis, and other people who knew me as a young boy, helped me to become a strong leader here in this community. At age 20, I started picking up young kids and taking them to my house, and my group grew from 4 kids to 30 kids in less than 3 months. Soon after, Familias Unidas, the neighborhood house of North Richmond, hired me to work with youth in our schools. Then the Richmond Police Department hired me as the crime prevention specialist. Later, the school district hired me as the Healthy Start director and worked in all after-school programs in high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. I also served as the vice chair for the Parks and Recreation Commission, and I also served in the Citizens Police Review Commission. I'm also a gang expert and work with the Public Defender's Office to help our youth who are wrongfully incarcerated. I organized 2 of the biggest political marches here in Richmond with over 8,000 Richmond residents. I'm also a business owner on 23rd Street, and everything that I've done is to contribute to my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Next up, Dimlis Johnson III.
Well, greetings and good evening. First off, I'd like to start by thanking the League of Women Voters and KCRT for putting together and extending this opportunity. As mentioned, my name is Dimlis Johnson III, and I was born and raised right here in the city of Richmond. Well, I was born at Brookside Hospital before they changed the name to Doctors and closed the doors on us. I'm a 4th-generation Richmond resident. My great-grandparents came to work in the Kaiser shipyards. My grandfather was the owner of the Savoy nightclub, and my grandmother worked in the cannery. I'm also a 4th-generation union member. I'm a proud shop steward for Teamsters Local 856, and I'm currently serve as the chair of the Economic Development Commission and on the Citizens Police Review Commission. Growing up, I attended Richmond schools before graduating from Howard University in 2015 and returning home to Richmond to work at Richmond High School as a school community organizer, where I work to coordinate both city and district resources to help eliminate some of the social, academic, and economic barriers that stand in the way of student and family success. If elected on November 6th, my platform includes community engagement, public safety, and economic empowerment. I look forward to answering your questions, and once again, thank you.
Mr. Johnson, thank you. Next up, Carol Johnson.
And again, I also want to thank everybody for this opportunity. And although I'm not a Richmond native, I have lived here for 22 years. After turning my life around in 1999, I earned my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And while I was in the middle of pursuing that, I got devastating news that I had 2 cousins in my family that were shot and killed in 2004 and 2006, and also a friend of mine from Contra Costa College. And I have been involved in the community ever since, actively helping to prevent gun violence. And I also got involved in a number of other issues, such as raising the minimum wage, protesting the jail expansion, banning the box on job applications and housing applications, so formerly incarcerated people could have second and third chances to turn their lives around. And I'm also involved with the Contra Costa Racial Justice Coalition and the Richmond Homeless Task Force to help reduce homelessness. So if elected, I will continue, and I'll be able to take my passion to the next level. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, thank you. Next up, Eduardo Martinez.
Thank you for having us here, and I want to thank the audience for showing up and trying to learn more about the candidates for the Richmond City Council. I'm running for re-election. This is my 4th year, and I believe I've done a fantastic job, if I do say so myself. And I say that because I am the only council member that is retired. And as a retired council member, I am able to dedicate myself 24/7 to the job of being a city council member. I'm here to represent residents. I'm here to listen to your needs and to see how the city can help you become a better resident in the city of Richmond, thereby lifting up the entire city. I'm a retired school teacher. I taught in West Contra Costa Unified School District for 18 years. Before that, I taught in juvenile hall, and I also helped set up a 7th, 8th grade self-contained court school that dealt specifically with pre-expulsion, with truants, and with kids just out of juvenile hall not ready to come back. I have an open mind, and as anyone in the business world will tell you, I am there for you. I am there to act as a liaison to help you connect with people who will help you move your business forward. So I hope you consider me for re-election, and I'm open to discussion on any items. I have an open door policy. Please come by and have a chat with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Next up, Vinay Pimple.
Thank you all for coming out here, and thank you to all of you watching at home. First, a bit about me. I would not be where I am without getting a lot of help from a lot of people. From my classmates who would read to me 4-6 hours straight, week after week after week, to my school teacher, a widow with 3 children, who would read to me anytime she had some free time, in school, even at her home. And of course, my family. How they don't need my help. So I try to help those I can by helping others. And that is why I am a volunteer with Writer-Coach Connection, where we tutor at Richmond High. That is why I was a volunteer mentor at RPAL. That is why I volunteered with Richmond Trees. We've planted over 500 trees in this city. And that is why I'm running for city council. We know what we need: education, better jobs, more housing, safety. When I was on council, I passed the $1,500 per year annual college and vocational training scholarship program. I worked hard to attract new businesses to the city, bringing better jobs, and also in improving our job training so that our residents are able to get those jobs. I supported and voted for 450 units of affordable housing, and I will fight to build housing for people at all income levels. I serve on the Crime Prevention Board, where we build better police-community relations, which is the most effective way to fight crime. I look forward to having a conversation about the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pimple. Next up, Ada Racinos.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ada Racinos. I'm lucky to be here. Thank you so much for coming out to listen to us. I really appreciate your time. I was born in Los Angeles to parents who immigrated from El Salvador seeking asylum because of the Civil War. My family has been fleeing violence for generations. And unfortunately, we continue to see that continues to happen to families today. The reason that I'm sitting here before you is because I think that our local government is a great opportunity for us to create the change that we want to see elsewhere. And we need to be headed in a different direction for our country. I'm a proud graduate of UC Santa Cruz. I graduated with a degree in Global Information and Social Enterprise Studies because I love technology and the opportunities it can offer us, but I also know that it has different impacts for different members of our society. I currently work at Ecoviva, a nonprofit organization that works to preserve mangroves and turtles in Central America. They work in areas where my ancestors were from, and I'm very proud to be able to give back in that way. I've been able to work with low-income communities and working moms for the past 6 years to be able to have them advocate for their needs and their rights as mothers, as immigrants, and as tenants. I was appointed to City Council last September, and I hope to continue to do the great work that supports our working families. I know that we need to stand up and advocate for not only more affordable housing, but to maintain people in the homes where they are now, because we need to preserve people. We need to preserve culture and community. And so I anticipate that I would appreciate any questions that you have this evening. I would love to get to know you all as well, and I hope that you'll consider voting for me November 6th. Thank you.
Ms. Racinos, thank you. And now Virginia Ramirez.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Virginia Ramirez, and I go by Vicky. I was born in Salinas, California, and I'm a proud daughter of Mexican immigrants who worked in the fields. We moved to Richmond when I was 7, And I'm very proud to be part of Richmond, a Richmond resident, because here I learned about speaking out for what you believe in, and that was just through my community where people spoke out and weren't quiet, as opposed to where in Salinas, it was more like, you know, in the small community that we had, it was more like, be quiet, you know, don't get involved and don't get in trouble, that kind of thing. I currently have 2 jobs. I work at a nonprofit that provides immigration services here in Richmond, and I also work at Target on Sundays. I'm also a proud member of ACE, that's Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, and I'm very proud to say I was part of the Rent Control and Just Cause for Evictions. Although the job is not done yet, we want to include everyone, and that's why we're fighting to pass Prop 10. My vision for Richmond is to, to maintain the welfare of the city and to, defend immigration rights, especially in this hostile environment. And lastly, to change the way we look at housing. I don't think that we're going the right way about housing, and we need to value people and their stability, and part of their stability is housing. Thank you.
Ms. Ramirez, thank you. Next up, Keith Rivers.
Hi everybody. My name is Keith Rivers. I'd like to start by letting you guys know that I hold 7 degrees. I'm currently working on my 8th degree. I hold 2 Associate of Arts degrees from Laney College, one in African American Studies, another in Liberal Arts. I also hold 2 bachelor's degrees from UC Riverside, one in Political Science, another in African American Studies. I currently hold 3 master's degrees, 1 master's in Political Science from California State University, Chico, another from Holy Names University in Culture and Spirituality, and I have a Master of Business Administration from St. Mary's. I'm currently a doctorate student at the University of San Francisco in the Organization and Leadership program. I'm currently a tutor at College Track in Oakland, California. Some of my past employment includes the City of San Rafael, the County of Marin, and the County of Marin and the City of Albany. I'm currently a member of the Western Political Science Association, and I'm also a member of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. Currently, I'm on the Graduate Student Senate at the University of San Francisco, where I was nominated. I've also been appointed to the Academic Affairs Committee at the University of San Francisco as well. Thank you.
Mr. Rivers, thank you. Next up, Jim Rogers.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for the League of Women Voters for once again sponsoring this. We have 13 people up here, a lot of good people, a lot of good issues, a lot of good ideas. I think a lot of things that we're going to agree on. But when you go to the voting booth on November 6th, the question you have to ask is, who can deliver the goods? I have a record of delivering. Holding Chevron accountable, the $90 million settlement on their modernization project, the best environmental safety, anti-pollution, greenhouse gas protections in the history of the United States. When we negotiated the $114 million settlement with them a few years before that, working with school board member Madeline Cronenberg, who's in the audience here, we qualified, or we were about to qualify an initiative which would have cost Chevron about $3 million a year. When we settled it, it got rid of initiatives. So Chevron was looking at a more or less permanent imposition, likely, of $3 million a year, and it was a big part of why they came up with the money. Doubling the pothole repair budget, not a sexy issue, no special interest behind it. I was the key person in that. We got more police, we got better police, we got the ONS, the Office of Neighborhood Safety. The crime rate went down dramatically. As Vice Chair of California Common Cause, I'm a believer in campaign reform, but I don't just talk about it by a lot of people. I'm the one who brought public financing, which is a real key, to Richmond and passed it. So I look forward to answering the questions. I look forward to talking to you folks personally. And I believe I have an unparalleled record in terms of progressive leadership and actually getting things done. Not talking about them, but getting the big important things done, taking on the important fights. I hope you look closely at the record, and I appreciate, again, your coming out to hear us tonight.
Mr. Rogers, thank you. Next up, David Schoenthal.
So good evening. Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters, to the audience, and to the audience at home. My name is Dave Schoenthal, and my family has lived in Richmond for 18 years. My daughter started going to school a few years back, and that started my career as a community volunteer. And I have had the honor and privilege to work within the community to help raise money for local nonprofits, such as Mindful Life Project, PRAM, Richmond Swims, over $100,000 raised for these local nonprofits. I've also served as the president of the Point Richmond Neighborhood Council, where we've worked on such things as parking, cleanup, land use issues. And really, this last weekend was incredible. On Saturday, we were able to put together with Supervisor John Joya's office, the mayor's office, Rubicon programs. We had the public defender and the district attorney all together convened in one place in the Richmond Memorial Auditorium to help people get a second chance. We served 125 people who have had a conviction on the record or have been incarcerated to be able to get their records expunged. This is the true nature of why I'm running, to be a servant leader, to be of service. And so what I've seen across the city as I've traversed the entire city is that people say that the city council doesn't listen to them. And so what I see is that my job is to bring people together in a collaborative way. A collaborative solutions workshop is what we're calling them. We've done 9 of them since March, and we're doing number 10 next week. So we've ranged on issues from human trafficking on 23rd Street, to illegal dumping, to homelessness, to housing in Richmond. And I've seen that people who disagree get in a room together and see each other and see the humanity in each other, that we can get things done. So I'm truly fired up for Richmond. I ask you to catch a wave with Dave. Thank you.
Mr. Schoenthal, thank you. Next up, Eleanor Thompson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting us here on tonight, inviting me here tonight. My name is Eleanor Thompson, and I have lived in Richmond for over 50 years. I'm a native of Arkansas. I was born and raised in Arkansas and Arizona, and I came to California after graduating high school. I've been a part of the Anti-Drug Task Force, a substitute teacher in the Richmond Unified School District. I've also founded a nonprofit called Social Progress, Inc., and it was founded in 1991 when we were having all the drive-by shootings and young men were dying in the streets. And I founded that program to help young men have a place to go after school for safety. And we would have over 25 or 30 youth there at one time. I was nominated by Officer John Taylor for the Citizen of the Year Award because of my work with the youth. I've also served as the Iron Triangle Neighborhood Vice President, and later I was elected as the President of the Iron Triangle Neighborhood Council. I not founded, but I was the block captain of the Neighborhood Watch on 7th and Ripley because I lived there for over 30 years. I received the George Carroll Community Award for my work in the community. I also received by Honorable but the Honorable Mary Rosemary Corbin, I received the Citizen of the Year Award for my work with the youth. And that's what I like, is working with the youth. I want to give them opportunity. And right now, we're in the process of trying to get housing where we can open a resource center, one-stop resource center for our youth, and also our seniors. We need to pay more attention to our seniors, and that's one of the other things I want to do for transportation. Thank you.
Ms. Thompson, thank you. Next up, Cesar Zepeda.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cesar Zepeda. I am known around the community as a community leader that gets things done. That is how I was raised, And being out in the campaign has made me think about sort of that little bug that was once placed inside of my heart that made me do that. I migrated to the United States when I was 8 years old. I didn't speak English. I was bullied all throughout the majority of my life. In high school, I even had scoliosis because I carried all of my textbooks with me because I was afraid to go to my locker. From there, I decided to stand up and try to make a change for myself and see what I can do for others. I was kicked out of my home for being gay, but I picked myself up. At age 22, I purchased my home, and from there, I became president of my homeowners association. The people around me said, "You are the only one that read the contracts. Tell us what we're supposed to do." So I became a leader in my community from there. Shortly after, I became the co-founder of the Hilltop District Homeowners and Stakeholders Association and the co-founder of the Hilltop District Neighborhood Council. Whenever I see an issue, whenever I see a problem, I tackle it head on. I don't wait for someone else to fix it. I want to make sure that I'm involved to be able to create that change that we need. One of the things that we need in Richmond and in West County is another hospital. We need a grocery store. We need ADA accessible sidewalks. I am a sprinter and I can run very easily, but other individuals cannot use sidewalks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have, as we know, a big group, a lively bunch of council hopefuls, and that means that during our debates this evening and other times as well, we'll have to be very brief in the way that we address the questions that come. So we're going to have 1 minute for each question. It'll force us to be concise and clear and speak directly to the citizens of Richmond. We'll start on my right, that's with Cesar Zepeda, and proceed to the left, and then the next question will go the opposite direction. The first question would be to you, Mr. Zepeda. What do you identify as the most important and immediate issue facing the city come November, and what's your strategy to advance a solution?
Thank you for the question. Economic development. Unfortunately, as much as we hate to say it, we need more money in the city. The budget had a $9 million deficit. That meant 25 police officers were cut. That meant services all around the city had to be cut to be able to balance that budget. So unless we're able to bring in more economic development, making sure that we bring in more people to give us their tax revenue and invest in our city, we're not going to be able to provide the social services, social programs that we need for our community. So making sure that we talk, we pick up the phone, and we make outgoing calls to people that want to invest in our city. And also importantly, we pick up the phone when they call us that they want to invest in our city and in our community. So making sure, again, economic development is on top of my list there. Thank you.
Mr. Zepeda, thank you. Next up, Eleanor Thompson.
My main thing would be safety, because we have to be safe first in the city. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that our police department is fully staffed. And I hear that we, at one time, maybe had 198 officers, and now I think we are down to 178. So I would like to see the police department fully staffed for safety in our city, and more jobs for our youth to keep them off the street, because if we keep them busy, they can't be out committing crime. And the other one is homeless, because our homeless population is starting to grow. And what we need to do about that is we need to use some of the vacant lots to create small houses, tiny small homes for them to get them off the streets. And in order to do that, the program in Stockton, I think, is a really good program that the mayor started, where he give the homeless jobs. They clean up around their encampment where they live. And also, I think that we should give them homes to live in. Thank you.
Ms. Thompson, thank you. Next up, David Schoenthal.
So thank you for the question. I think that our top priority on November 7th, after election, so when we get in, is public safety, right? It's over and over again throughout the entire city. People say that they just don't feel safe. The police department is working at a very, very short-staffed, right? And we're paying overtime. So we're paying extra money for less people. So if they're working 10 hours, 8 hours off, another 6 hours, their mental acuity is low. So how can we expect them to make great decisions and get out of the car to work with and collaborate with the people of Richmond, which is what we want. We want them to collaborate, a community policing program that is a nationwide recognized program. We need to work with each other. 112,000 people living in Richmond, 178 sworn officers. We can be a very powerful team. Thank you very much.
Mr. Schoenthal, thank you. Next up, Jim Rogers, to restate the question, most important and immediate issue come the day after Election Day, and what's your strategy to solve?
It's a great question. I just want to say first, when you first asked the question, you mentioned the word citizens. My belief is that the people up here need to represent everybody in the city of Richmond. Citizens, people who are not citizens yet, doesn't matter. We're responsible for everybody, not just the people who happen to be voters. The biggest issue is obviously public safety. We all want more police. We all want better police. I'm the one with the record of working with my colleagues, working with the law enforcement community, and getting a measure passed which raised about $6 million a year. 2/3 of that was from heavy industry. About 56% of it was from Chevron alone. It was a progressive tax. It was a needed tax. And when you talk about services, if you're not figuring out how to get the money, you're just flapping your gums.
Mr. Rogers, thank you. Next up, Keith Rivers.
Hello. The most important thing to me would be public safety. In order to lower crime, you must ensure more employment and more internship opportunities. As an MBA graduate, I believe that I will be able to attract startups and established companies in all fields to be able to come to Richmond and provide jobs for the youth. I also believe we need more community policing. We need the police to respect the people and the people to respect the police. Thank you.
Mr. Rivers, thank you. Virginia Ramirez, same question, please.
Hi, my most important and immediate issues are development, housing, and the budget. For development, I'm looking into the great work that the city has already put forward. For example, renovating 23rd Street and the development of the downtown. I would do anything I can to continue that work. And for housing, when Prop 10 passes, I would like to see it expand to everyone, and because I believe everyone deserves a stable home. Of course, also look at everyone who lives here, landlords and renters, and make sure that the rent board mediates between both and that we're fair. Lastly, managing the budget, finding creative ways to bring in revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Ada Racinos.
Hello. The most important issue coming up after this election is going to be building and maintaining affordable housing for all income levels. We need to be able to provide for our most vulnerable pathways to housing, our homeless population and our homeless youth. We also have to be able to maintain full support of our rent board that has been successful in helping thousands of residents stay in their homes and avoid unfair evictions. We have to continue working with like-minded developers that are socially conscious and able to bring funds into the city to develop housing that is not only affordable but also market rate in places that are attractive, like our downtown and our transit areas. We also need to advocate for our fair share of county and state funds to build more affordable housing and to provide housing and services for our homeless population. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Racinos. Next up, Vinay Pimple.
So I think the most important issue is economic development because it really feeds into lots of other things. Over the next few years, our budget challenges are going to increase because of increased contributions to CalPERS. So it will help with that. also economic development always goes hand in hand with housing, because housing provides the customers so that the businesses actually come here. The increased finances will help us increase safety by allowing us to hire the police officers that we really need to hire. So, so economic development is the most important because it really helps us take care of a lot of other problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pimplay. Eduardo Martinez.
Yes, my number one concern is making sure that the city has smart development. As we've developed up to now, it's been more of a hodgepodge. Even though we have a city plan, the development isn't following that plan in a logical way. For instance, we have McDonald Avenue, and we have all these empty buildings, empty lots, and that's where we need to do the development. Instead, we're looking at projects which will actually tax the city budget. You know, for instance, the annexation of North Richmond, we're looking at $1 million a year budget deficit by doing that. The Point Melody issue, we are looking at over $150 million infrastructure cost. And so the question is, where is that money going to come from? In order for it to come from the developers, we're looking at more than people are willing to spend.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Carol Johnson.
So what I believe is the most important issue facing Richmond is the rise in gun violence and other crimes. And it is going to take an all-hands-on-deck approach. We can't leave it all up to the police because they are understaffed and they can't be everywhere. So I would advocate for a strengthening of neighborhood watch groups because Richmond ceasefire has run its course. And I would also advocate for working with, continuing to work with Safe Return Project to help advocate for formerly incarcerated people. It's not enough to tell them to stop, but we need to give them the tools, you know, to help them turn their lives around.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next, Dimlis Johnson.
Well, from our research, it seems that the most immediate need after this election will be the city's finances. In order for us to cover that $600 million plus shortfall in pensions, as well as to provide more resources to the police department so they can do their job and to help pave our roads and fix and clean up our parks, we need the money in order to do so. Now, my solution in order to get that money includes increasing our business tax revenue stream. There's 3 ways that the city makes money. That's utility use tax, property tax, and business tax. Without touching property taxes and forcing everyone to buy a landline phone, I have an aggressive business recruitment plan that will bring in industrial businesses as well as help to grow and establish small businesses here in the city of Richmond, which will then help contribute to our business tax revenue, and we'll have the money to give to our police department, also to pay off our pension shortfall, in addition to a number of other projects that communities and residents have needs to fix. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next up, Diego Garcia.
Number one priority is safety, public safety. Public safety in our streets, public safety with our businesses, and of course in our parks. If we're able to get that public safety and have the community feel better and safer, then that will definitely increase our economic development. If we can get the economic development, that will equal to more staff in our departments, and definitely will help us with getting the appropriate safety resources that is needed. Public safety with our youth, especially in our parks, our youth centers, our schools. That's my number one priority. That's what I've been working for 23 years, and that has been the best result working in this community. If people don't feel safe, they're not gonna go out and purchase, they're not gonna go out there and buy. If they don't feel safe, they're not gonna use our parks or our community centers. If they don't feel safe, people are gonna be leaving Richmond. So my number one priority is safety.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Next, Nat Bates.
Revenue, revenue, and revenue. Richmond has a budget of $168 million. Property tax represents 22%, sales tax 25%, utility tax 29%. That's about 76%. which means that we need revenue. Public safety, as important as it is, number 2 probably on the list, you cannot spend money that you don't have. That means you've got to go out and attract new businesses, be more business friendly to show respect for the current businesses. Hopefully they will expand and bring in additional revenue. You've got to get additional companies to locate in Richmond, and public safety is the key to it. No one is going to locate in any city that has high crime, violence, and so forth. So you've got to get revenue, get a public safety that is strong, and you can then get businesses to locate here.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. The next question will begin with you, Mr. Bates, and we'll proceed to your left across the dais. This question comes from the audience. It's about Point Malate, which is a large piece of shoreline land in the city, and the future of that piece of land, the future usage of that land, is something that's very controversial within the community. What is your vision for the future of Point Malate? This is a future that will, in all likelihood, be decided by the next council on which you wish to sit. What is your vision for the future of Point Malate, and how will you get there?
Well, first of all, not very many people understand how we acquired Point Malate in the first place. It was through Ron Dellums and his committee, who closed numerous bases throughout the United States. And California, and in particular Northern California, got hit with about 26 of those bases closures. One of the conditions, and we got that property for $1 incidentally, one of the conditions was, at least 2, economic development for job creation and revenue to the cities. Now, we tried to do a casino, as everybody knows. It didn't go through, but that's water under the bridge. Now we have to look at how we're going to develop that project. And if we don't develop the proper way, the government could come back and take it away from us. We've got to develop it with economic development as the Dellums bill mandated. And the judge has already worked out some agreement, and it's important that we adhere to that procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Next up, Diego Garcia.
Point Malate. You know, I've been here living in Richmond for 40 years, and just last year I knew about it. And it was only because someone invited me to go and take a look at it because of what's happening right now. So we have to understand that we have to be respectful of the natural habitat that is there already. We understand there's going to be economic development going on there. But we also have to include the community in this process that is very important. Because if we don't include the community, most of the people that I've spoken to, they don't even know what Point Malate is. So in order for us to decide what's going to happen out there, the community has to be not just involved, but they have to know exactly what's going on out there. So one of the biggest things and concerns that I have is not just having too much economic development out there, but to be able to have things for kids, sports fields, summer camps, be able to bring the community out there to really understand how beautiful Point Malate is. So I would say that we need to get the community engaged.
Thank you. Next, Dimlis Johnson III.
Well, my vision for Point Malate is the people's vision for Point Malate. And that vision, and when I say the people's vision, that includes multiple communities with various and diverse visions for Point Malate. So there is room in Point Malate for open space. There's also room for economic development. And that vision most definitely includes a family-friendly environment where students, families, individuals coming in from out of town can come and enjoy our shoreline as well as our waterfront. But then there's an excellent hiking trail in Point Malate that we most definitely need to preserve. So as mentioned before, my vision for Point Malate is the people's vision for Point Malate, where there's a chance for open space and then also a chance to help diversify and increase Richmond's tax base through economic development that is family-friendly and respects our nature and our history in Point Malate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Carol Johnson.
So, Point Malate, I just have a lot of concerns about it. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful land there and a lot of possibilities, but there is no sewer system, and there is only one way in and one way out. So if there was a fire like what happened the Chevron fire 2012, it would be a huge disaster. So you know, we can't do anything else until we deal with those core issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Eduardo Martinez.
Yes, Point Bellotti is the largest land transfer, largest public land transfer to private hands, and it will change Richmond forever. The way that we've done it, which is an agreement behind closed doors, signed by the city's lawyers and the lawyers for Jim Levine, is wrong, because the public did not have a chance to have their input. In the public hearings, the input has been, how do we put 670 units in this land? And the major thing is that the developers are getting all the prime property and just the hillsides, which are basically just trails, through eucalyptus groves and other things is not an equitable use of the land between the public and the private.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Next up, Vinay Pimple.
So I agree with Eduardo that one of the big problems that has raised concerns among the people is the backroom deal on Point Bellotti. I opposed such a deal in 2016, which is why it happened after I left council. Now, the court settlement says that we have to build 670 units. I think we should get as much public input on that as possible. What I would like to see is, the kind of amenities that would that would both attract people who may not be nature lovers per se, but that would increase their their wonder about nature and make them explore the beautiful area that is Point Bellotti. One of the saddest things that I've heard is, a kid saying how much he enjoyed the camp and then say, well, it's the first time that I ever camped outdoors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pimble. Next up, Ada Racinos, to restate the question, your vision for Point Bellotti and how you will achieve it.
Okay. So my vision is that I've heard from various community members that they would like a destination place to go with their families. That includes things from economic development to more recreational activities, that it be developed sustainably and honor our history and the Ohlone peoples and the fishermen that came before us. We also have to have opportunities for youth. People either want soccer fields, maybe we can have some water sport activities, camping. Some of the thoughts around arranging and restoring the bungalows have been to use them as Airbnbs or B&Bs or to use them as nonprofit offices. The big goal here is to create a space for all. And one of the really great ideas that's come out of this public process is an education center, a cultural center where people can go and learn about Richmond and learn about the area and the space, learn about the eelgrass beds, learn about the history and the environment that is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Racinos. Virginia Ramirez.
Hi, I see Point Bellotti as a recreational area with sports fields that everyone in Richmond has access to, and I imagine this area also being able to bring in revenue. I wrote this down. Given the current settlement, I would suggest a large piece of the land to be a land trust so that the community can have input on what they want it to look like in years to come. And I see it a recreational area for everyone to use in the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. That's what I envision for Point Bellotti. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Next up, Keith Rivers.
I believe, number one, we need to respect the existing habitat. Number two, I think we should make the public more aware about Point Bellotti. Being a lifetime Richmond resident, I hardly knew anything about it. So I think that's important to get more word out about it. Advertisement is key. I also think Point Bellotti could be used as a marketing tool to attract, like I said, startups earlier when I was talking. I also believe Point Bellotti could be used to further education. It could be used to help the youth with emphasis on college, college prep. We could use it for programs and activities, tutoring, mentoring, and life training. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Next up, Jim Rogers.
I think a lot of us have heard the public input. I've been hearing comments from my colleagues here that I think represents that there are different goals which people in Richmond want us to get out of this. We want recreation, we want economic development. I think that economic development needs to be targeted, it needs to be valuable, it needs to be confined to a fairly small footprint so we can keep the open space. When we talk about access, I'm not going to be happy if at the end of the day, upper income people from Point Richmond are the only ones going out there. I think we should have the economic development, have the engine, have programs to get inner city kids to enjoy this, kayak centers, transportation, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Next up, David Schoenthal.
So I attended 4 out of 5 community visioning sessions. So 3 by the city, 1 by Sprawled Deaf, and 1 by a community group brought together. There's been a lot of talk about Point Mulati. Some people in Richmond think that Point Mulati is Narnia. It's somewhere else, and it's not for them. So what we really need to do is listen to the people of Richmond. What I've heard is that this can be an incredible place for people all over the world to come to and see economic development and sustainable green businesses. Where are the people going to live that are working there? If we have a science and technology center where people can learn about the eelgrass beds, well, those people can live on site. So the housing could be affordable for those people who are working in Point Mulati. This could be a world-class green environment so that we could live and learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schoenthal. Eleanor Thompson.
Thank you. I went on a tour over at Point Mulati, and I probably was one of those people who thought it was somewhere else until I went there. But I did see that there were houses there at one time. They were small houses where the Army or the military people lived. And I think that there can be houses again there, maybe not a lot of homes, but there can be some homes and leave open space. And I've heard a lot of people talk about the beach, make sure that, you know, nothing happened to the beach, and people, everybody, Richmond resident, be able to go out and enjoy the scenery and take the children out, as many has already said. So I think that there can be redevelopment there, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Next, Cesar Zepeda.
So I've said this before as well, that Point Mulati is not mine, it's ours. So we have to start with listening to the community. I do remember going out there when I was a little kid and hearing some of the stories, especially with the whale hunting and just listening to what it used to be, right? So we have to continue listening to the community. I don't have an answer of what, you know, we're going to put this here or we're going to build more of that. But we got to listen to the community. Overall, this belongs to the community. Whether they know that it's there or not, it does belong to the greater community. At the end of the day, we would also have to follow the mandate that whatever the court says. So we have to figure out that. And if they do say that we have to build, making sure that we have a balanced building and that we preserve as much land as possible. So figuring out a good balance for our community, listening to them, and figuring out that, or knowing that we have a very diverse community, and we have to take all that input into consideration. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zepeda. The next question will be to you first, and then we'll proceed to your right. The City of Richmond has a rent control program. It is controversial with many members of the community. Give us your assessment of the performance of that program and what, if any, reforms you'll look to advance.
Just recently, I found out, someone was telling me, and I don't know how true it might be, but someone was mentioning that some of the proponents of Measure L, which is the measure that passed rent control in Richmond, have actually been talking about how bad it's been going. And now to fix it, we have to put it back on the ballot. It's something that we cannot fix at City Council. So no matter what we believe we need to fix, it can't be fixed up here. It needs to go back out to the ballot. Some of the issues that I had as the Measure L was going out and about was giving them a blank check of spending however much money they wanted to spend to get up and going. That money comes from the general fund. Having a non-elected board. So depending on what city council you have is how that board's going to treat the community. So it's either going to go on one extreme or the other extreme. So there's a lot of different issues that I hope that we'll be able to fix, and we're able to get that back onto the ballot. And again, we have to put it out to the ballot. We can't fix it at city council level.
Thank you, Mr. Zepeda. Eleanor Thompson, same question.
I supported the rent control as it is, the policy that they passed, the council, but I find a lot of landlords are having problems with it because when they try to sell their properties, it's hard to sell. And if they're renting under market rate, they can't raise the rent the next year more than 1%. So it's probably good for the renters, but I think it's probably hard for the landlords. So,
Ms. Thompson, thank you. David Schoenthal.
So what I've heard is that it, for the property owners that are under this, that own the rental units, is that it's difficult to understand and to navigate, and that there are additional fees that these mom and pop owners have to pay. So 75% of our rental market is made up of mom and pops. These mom and pop property owners, there's many of them who sold ahead of rent control. So it doesn't increase, and it hasn't increased the rental market. In fact, it decreases it and exacerbates our housing shortage. The next thing is that it really, look, at 3.75% per year increase, it does not stop displacement. So 3 years from now, if it's too expensive for somebody to live there now, 3 years from now, at nearly 12%, it's going to be that much more expensive. People are going to have to move as a result of it because of stagnation in our wages. The wages have not gone up to make it affordable to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schoenthal. Jim Rogers.
Thank you. This is a difficult issue, and there's a lot of controversy in the community on this. I think the key to it is to realize that rent control alone is not going to solve the problem. Development will. The thing that the people in the development community care about isn't so much a reasonable rate of return, having a limit on that. What they care about is the just cause provision. Makes it very hard to get rid of people who are drug dealers, prostitute rings, whatever. The $2.5 million a year, which either the landlord has to eat or they have to pass along to the tenants. Probably more often they pass along to the tenants. So what I think we need to do is try and get a community consensus for the part that tenants do care about, which is having some type of a limit so they know they're not going to get that 20% increase, and getting rid of some of the things that drive the development community nuts. At that point, we can have a situation where we can move forward, people can develop, and tenants can have some certainty.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Keith Rivers.
From speaking with some residents, rent control is needed. But we also need higher wages to face the times that we're in, which means we need better economic development here in the city of Richmond. I also want a policy that's fair for both renters and for owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Again, to restate the question before you take it, Virginia Ramirez, assess the performance of the policy and what tweaks, if any, will you seek to advance?
I believe the rent control board is doing a great job. They're there for the landlords and renters. It's not us versus them. It's an issue that came about because it was happening, and there were really high rent increases, and something had to be done to protect the people that were going through that. The rent board allows for a fair share of return for the investment of a landlord's, for the landlord's investment, if they believe they're not getting a fair share of return, they could raise up the rent more than 3% of the CPI. And yeah, well, basically, it's the To me, the issue about housing is that it's, oh crap.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez.
Oh, wow.
Thank you again, Ms. Ramirez. Ada Racinos, please.
I do think that our rent control ordinance and just cause for eviction and our rent board are doing a really excellent job. They represent both the fair return of the landlords as well as the rights of a tenant. When 63% of our Black community are renters and 60% of our Latino community are renters, I do believe that it is a racial justice issue. We need to preserve our community from being able to live free of fear that one day they will be homeless. With that being said, a lot of the landlords that I talk to are excited about rent control. They want to be able to live in a community that's stable and dependable, that they know that their neighbors are there long term. This giant rhetoric about being able to evict, bad tenants, it's a very small issue. The majority of people don't deal with that. And if they did, they would be able to go to the rent control board and be able to go through the process fairly. I hope, if anything, come this November, we're able to expand the program by passing Proposition 10. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Racinos. Vinay Pimple.
Yeah, so as Mr. Zapata pointed out, we on council cannot tweak anything. If we want to change it, it will have to be a repeal and replace. In terms of the performance, rent control has been in place for only 2 years. And over the last couple of years, the rents in the Bay Area, even though they are very high, they have been largely stable. So it's really difficult to assess it. So we can only assess it based on how it has worked elsewhere. And, Ms. Racinos is right in saying that it's a racial justice issue. Well, the San Francisco rent board study showed that while in market rate units, 54% are whites and 46% are non-whites. In rent-controlled units, 72% are whites, only 28% are non-whites. Rent control gives whites a 120% advantage.
Thank you, Mr. Pimble. Eduardo Martinez, please.
Yes, I think rent control has worked well here. As Vinay Pimple pointed out, it's only been a few years, so the rent board is making tweaks on how they take care of the business of rent control. One thing that they have provided that we haven't had before is data on rental units, on prices, on locations, and this is essential information that the city needs in order to do future city planning. So I think that information is invaluable, and along with the passage of Proposition 10, I think we're going to move forward in a positive way. I did want to say that there are a lot of factors which we haven't considered that has changed how rent control is able to affect things. For instance, in Oakland, when Uber decided to move there, the price of rents went up extraordinary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Carol Johnson.
So I definitely believe that rent control works, and there are so many homeless people that recently have become homeless. And if you ask the majority of them, did they become homeless because of rent control or the lack of rent control? We can see that it's the lack of rent control. The landlords have been raising the rent beyond like $500 to $1,000 every year. Some landlords have raised it $2,000 more a year, and the families just can't afford it anymore. Senior citizens are homeless. But I also understand that it's frustrating for landlords, so we can, work together with and find some middle ground for that.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Dimlis Johnson III.
Well, I think with any law or any ordinance, we have to realize that nothing or no bill is perfect. And so with that, we have to be willing to work to fix the imperfections and to plug the holes. Rent control passed because we do have a number of landlords and property owners who are taking advantage of Richmond residents. But at the same time, we cannot paint all property owners with a broad stroke and stereotype landowners as evil people who want to take advantage of renters. What we must do is start putting people in the same room at the same time and having one conversation with everyone. And then also bringing together property owners who are for rent control with property owners who are against rent control, so that way we can all find a common ground to move forward. As I mentioned before, no ordinance or no law is perfect. We must begin to recognize the fallacies in everything, because nothing is infallible, and we have to be willing to work on those imperfections so we can create a better future for everyone, not just a select group of individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Diego Garcia.
Yes, thank you. You know, I agree with the concept of rent control. I am a single homeowner who rents the house. I also rent a complex units, and I agree. I agree with the concept. But this reminds me of my program with soccer. You know, we have a $100 fine for any adult that receives a red card. And everyone out there who is agreeing with the rules, they love that rule. But the ones that know they're going to get a red card disagree with it. So what I'm saying here is that, you know, we understand there's some landowners out there that do take advantage of this and might not like this. But I understand that there's a lot of people out there that do suffer and would not be able to live here in Richmond if there wasn't a rent control process. I agree with the rent control board. I've been in some of those meetings, and they are here for both owners and also the tenants. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Nat Bates.
Rent control, in my opinion, was passed because of emotional issues related to landlords raising the rents and so forth. But there's another bigger issue that I think that we're not addressing, and that's supply and demand. While we have done a good job of providing upscale housing, we have done a terrible job of providing low and moderate income housing. We have land all over the city, down in front of Food Co., on the Parkway, that we should be devoting to providing low and moderate income. When you have a supply, then obviously the rents are going to go down. But the just cause is another issue that we have to address. If you don't pay your rent, there's no reason in the world why you can go to court and get 30 days, 90 days, 2 months, or whatever, and continue to live there. Pay your rent. Simple as that.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. We will begin with you on that end and progress to your left. It has now come time for closing statements. We have 1 minute each for your closing statement. Make your case to the residents of Richmond about why they should support you. Let's begin again with Nat Bates. 1 minute closing statement, please.
Well, thank you very much to the League of Women Voters and everyone who's participating. My mother named me Nathaniel, and I didn't know why, but she informed me that that was God chosen. Well, the biblical is speaking. And I think that during my career serving the citizens of Richmond, there's no greater pleasure than serving the people that you love and you care about. And that has been my commitment during the entire 30-plus years that I have been on this city council as your mayor, vice mayor, and council member. Even though I'm not on the council, I'm continuously being asked, could you help us this? Could you help us that? I said, well, have you called council member XYZ? No, they don't return the phone call. So even though I'm not on the council, I'm still helping people. And that's my life ambition, to help those who have needs beyond their capacity to deal with them themselves. And I trust that the voters will recognize that and vote for me on November the 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Your closing statement, Diego Garcia.
Hello, everyone, again. We need to remember that Richmond is a city with rich history, outstanding leaders with the most diverse community. I believe that we need homegrown leaders with a track record that can prove it. We cannot afford to jeopardize our future with false promises that no one person can achieve alone. The council is composed by 7 different people who have the best intentions. However, if they cannot work with each other, their best intentions really don't mean anything. We are creatures of habits, and we need to look closely at the 13 candidates that we have here. Check what they have provided in the past or not. We have incumbents, veteran city council members, fairly new residents, and strong community leaders. Do you want to put our future on faith or years of experience? Our citizens need independent leaders with positive attitudes who are invested in this community and can work with everyone. We need leaders who can mobilize the community to
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Demlis Johnson III.
Well, once again, my name is Demlis Johnson III, and I'm a 4th-generation Richmond resident. I was born and raised here in the city of Richmond, and in this time of gentrification and displacement, what we need is homegrown leadership. Individuals who don't need to be shown where the problem is, but know where to go. Who knows that things aren't black and white, but people in Richmond exist in the gray areas. An individual who's willing to build bridges and go across the aisle and work to build common ground here in the city of Richmond, to move Richmond forward without leaving anyone behind. That's why I've been endorsed by the California State Democratic Party, the West County Democratic Club, Lambda Democrats, Contra Costa Young Democrats, Black Women Organizing for Political Action, 2 former mayors of Richmond, California, and over 6 former council members, as well as a host of other labor organizations and individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Carol Johnson.
So I have a proven record of 11 years of being there, showing up and speaking up whenever there was a need. So if you want a council person who is not just talking about it, but will be the positive change that we need, then vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Eduardo Martinez.
Yes. Because of the questions asked, I wasn't able to address some of the issues that I want to move forward. I think of myself as a visionary, and I'm looking forward to working with Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco possibly, and the County of Alameda to establish a public bank so that the monies that the cities spend can come back to the cities so that we can reinvest and make our city stronger. I'm also the person who instituted a pact between the West Contra Costa Unified School District, the county, and the city to work together to help bridge the digital divide. So. I also want to work on smart development without displacement, and I have all these ideas of building a better educational system so that we can work from kindergarten all the way through the university. I am also a good worker, and so I think Vinay Pimple and
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Your closing statement, Vinay Pimple.
Thank you. So, we all want great services, but we can only do it with sound finances. That is why I led the successful fight to balance our city's budget for the first time in a few years. With me, what you get is somebody who is open to all perspectives, but someone who will base his decisions on the evidence, on the facts. That is why the East Bay Times said that I was by far the most financially astute member on council. That is why the California Democratic Party has endorsed me. So I ask for your vote and your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pimple. Ada Racinos.
It would be my honor to continue serving as your city council member. Since my appointment, I have worked with various stakeholders to introduce a resolution called the Buy Clean policy for the state of California so that we can start building things in our city that are more environmentally friendly and conscious of fossil fuels. I also formed a partnership with the 23rd Street Steering Committee so that we can bring more funding and attention to the corridor. We are going to be working on a mapping project to lay out all of the different opportunities we have for commercial and housing development. I'm also a large advocate for affordable housing and rent control. Those are things that are very important to me, and I will continue to fight for them. I also served on the ad hoc committee to select our new city manager. Martinez is going to be a very great city manager that will bring a lot of new ideas, and I look forward to working with him. I also increased community engagement in various development projects and looking forward to formalizing that as well. As the daughter of immigrants, I was very proud to update our sanctuary city policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Racines. Virginia Ramirez.
I received my BA in social welfare, and the reason why I chose that career is because I always found myself caring for the other person, putting myself in their shoes, and even if I wasn't going through something, and understanding how uncomfortable that was and how it affected their lives, and I wanted to advocate for them. I also understand that we are complex human beings, and we in order to help each other, we need to look at all the factors, not just see as items. And what was I gonna say? I'm blanking out, sorry. Items. Oh, and I also know how to be a team player. I can sit down and do the research and come up with solutions for complex problems as well. I have both. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. Next up, closing statement, Keith Rivers.
My father, Minister Donald Rivers, used to bring his knowledge to the city of Richmond, California, before he passed away in 1997. Now I hope the city of Richmond will let me do the same. I have passed classes in accounting, finance, and economics. You also should select me because currently I have multiple law schools recruiting me heavily. I will do everything in my power to make sure Richmond is a better city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Jim Rogers.
Thank you again for attending. I believe I have a unique perspective, having both started a successful small business, about 20 employees, and having served as a public elected official. I've used my financial background to come up with implementation of policies that save us money. One quick example. When I worked with the community, led the fight, working with school board member Cronenberg, we managed to keep open the 3 schools that were slated for closure, Kennedy, Grant, and Olinda. But not only that, I brought a proposal to council which had us pay for keeping the schools open, had the school district give us money to fix the roof at the Kennedy Swim Center. So the city actually not only saved the schools, but did it at no net cost to the taxpayer. That is the kind of solutions you come up with when you've had experience, again, both in the public sector and in the private sector. I make no bones about the fact that I am a progressive Democrat. Thank you.
Thank you. David Schoenthal.
So thank you all once again for being here tonight. Richmond is the most beautiful city in the world. It's got beautiful people, beautiful businesses, and a lot of opportunity. What I'm running as is as a servant leader. I've done the homework. I worked in the community, and for the last several months, I've been hosting collaborative solutions workshops, listening to the people, seeing them, respecting them for who they are and what they want to do. We've found that there are solutions that we can find together. We may argue about getting there, but it's not about ideology. It's about doing the right thing. It's about finding solutions that matter to all of us. We can find common ground. I'm that person, and I'm looking forward to being of service to you.
Thank you, Mr. Schoenthal. Eleanor Thompson.
Thank you all again for inviting me here on tonight. I have served the city of Richmond and the residents since 1991. When our community needed a sign on the corner of 7th and Ripley, I went down and fought for that. When staff said we didn't need it, we got it. So I've also served on the committee with Chief Lansdowne to create the community policing when he was the chief of the city. So if you want someone who will fight for you, elect Eleanor Thompson November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Cesar Zepeda.
They are those that look at things the way they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask, why not? That's a quote from Robert F. Kennedy. And I believe in that quote. And others believe in me. That is why I've received the endorsement of the California Democratic Party. I received the endorsement of the Sierra Club, the Peace Hours Association, Senator Kevin De Leon, our state controller, Betty Yee, the Contra Costa Building and Trades, Equality California, the list goes on. I am innovative, forward-thinking, pragmatic, balanced. I hope that I'm able to earn your vote. And regardless of what happens in November, because you don't need a title to create community and change, I will continue fighting for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zepeda, and thank you to all of our council candidates for participating tonight. I'd like to ask our audience for a round of applause for everyone here tonight. Another thank you for the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa County for hosting this great forum. Thanks especially to B. Roberson and Naomi Williams and Joan Carpenter and Consuela Lara for all helping administer this debate. Thanks also to KCRT, the audience in the chamber tonight, and all the residents across Richmond watching at home. Thank you all very much, and please go out and vote. I'm Robert Rogers. Good night.